The Creature in the Woods by Santa's Favorite Boy. The trees looming outside my bedroom window swayed. Something sinister lurked beyond. Even as a child, I knew this. As the night crept on, their pacing would pick up, and by 3 a.m, they would rattle my entire room, shaking the ground like an earthquake. Somehow, no one but me noticed. I tried to tell my parents that something just wasn't right about those woods, but as most adults would, they dismissed me as a child with an overactive imagination. Looking back now, I can't say that I'd have done anything different with my own children. Sometimes, though, even having moved across the country from my childhood home, when I wake up at 3 a.m. shaking in terror, I can't help but blame them for what happened that November night, for the consequences of their misguided attempts at allowing me to conquer my fears, and how they've weighed so heavily on my life. It's stripped away the adventure that I used to have, and it's replaced it with lackluster courage that scarcely allows me to leave my house past dark. I'll recount it all now. I won't leave out any details, and everything I say is true. This is the story of my childhood woods. "Mom," I said, shaking her awake, "there's something in the woods coming to get me." She blinked a few times, and then tried but failed to hide her irritation as she asked me, "Charlie, how do you know it's coming to get you?" I took a breath and began to explain, and then I stopped. The truth was, I couldn't explain how I knew. I just knew. My mother sighed again and rolled over and went back to sleep, tossing me the words, "Just go back to sleep, honey, please." I didn't go back to sleep. Not that night or the next. Rather, I slept during school and in the car on the way there. Sleeping at night in my bedroom with what was lurking in the woods right past my backyard was, well, it was impossible. After the third sleepless night, my teacher called home and explained to my mother that I had been sleeping in class for the past 3 days. I, in turn, tried to explain to my mother that I couldn't sleep in my room anymore, not with the monster watching me. She sighed and fruitlessly tried to explain that nothing was coming to get me, but in the end, I slept in my parents' bed for the rest of the week. On Friday night, just after dinner, my dad tapped me on the shoulder and brought me into my room. "Listen, son," he said, staring out my bedroom window. "I know it looks scary out there, like there's some big bad monster waiting for the perfect moment to come and get us. But trust me, the woods are safe. I used to spend a lot of time out there when I was your age." "But that was different woods," I said. "There's something wrong with this one. It's not like your woods," I told him. He sighed and said, "Why don't you and your brother go out there for a little bit? He'll show you that everything's okay." I looked down at my feet and then at everywhere except for him and the window. I didn't want to go, but even so, I knew that I had no choice. "Mason!" he screamed to my then 15-year-old brother. Before I could say a word, my father spoke once more. "Go on, get your shoes. It'll be quick." I waited by the back door for a few minutes before Mason came crashing down the stairs and walked past me viciously, swinging the door open as he grumbled, "Come on, you baby." Following him outside, we started walking towards the woods. It was around 7 and the tips of the trees were beginning to sway, although there was no noticeable wind in the air. I felt Mason tense up as we came closer to the woods. As much as he tried to hide it, he could feel it. Something was in the air. Something was wrong. As we came mere feet away from the trees, I tried to pull backwards in an attempt to save not only myself, but my brother. However, he grabbed me by the hand and then pulled me into a hug. "I'm sorry for being so mean to you," he said. "I know you're scared, and that's okay." He let me out of the hug and then paused for a moment before grabbing my hand once more. This time he was talking more to himself than to me as he said, "Sometimes you have to face your fears. We walked maybe 10, 20 yards into the woods before he let go of my hand. It seemed so peaceful out there, safe even. I breathed a sigh of relief, and then I looked at my brother and smiled, an expression which he returned. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could even begin the sentence, the sound of the trees shaking began to pick up so rapidly that I couldn't make out a word at all. I looked into his eyes and I saw dismay mixed with disbelief. I heard a crunching sound deep in the forest, like a large animal was walking on leaves and sticks. Mason grabbed my arm and started to pull me out of the woods. But I was frozen. My body was locked in place as my mind swam in terror. I was right about the woods all along. And now, whatever it was coming for me. And all I could do was stand still and wait. Mason picked me up and began running the way that we'd come. It's a storm coming. We just got to get out here before it... The ground shook, interrupting him, and I screamed as a tree fell behind us. Mason stopped running for just a moment as he turned to look at what was happening. But in that instant, I threw myself from his arms. My urge to run had never been greater. And run I did, so fast that Mason's screaming of my name quickly faded into nothing. It was minutes before I realized that somehow in my terror, I had run the wrong way and was working my way deeper and deeper into the woods. Today, I'm not so certain that I was running the wrong way. After recounting the events of that night so many times in my head over the years, I've come to the conclusion that in those few hours that I spent in the woods that night, there was no way out. I stopped abruptly when I realized that I wasn't getting any closer to home. And then I did the only thing that I could think to do. I screamed for my brother as loud as I could, assuming that he would come to rescue me momentarily. However, what I heard in response was not the calm and reassuring voice of a brother coming to the aid of his panicked sibling, but rather the deep and raspy tone of the monster I had been quietly evading for my entire childhood.
"Charlie,"
it whispered, stretching the word out as if it were an entire sentence.
"Where did you go, Charlie?"
I spun around again and again, eyeing each tree suspiciously as I attempted to find where the voice was coming from. "Where are you?" I asked. "Where's my brother?" In response, all I heard was a chuckle, but this time, I could feel the sound entering my ears like the breath of someone whispering from inches away. It tickled my eardrums and made me shiver. "Can I leave?" I asked. "I just want to go home. I won't come back."
"But Charlie,"
the voice said now, childlike, and seeming to come from one specific tree directly in front of me.
"I don't want you to go."
"Okay," I said, whimpering as I silently prayed for someone to save me. Finally, the monster stepped out from behind the tree. Once again, I was too afraid to will my body to move. Instead, I was stuck, facing the very thing that had taunted me for years, and that I thought was very likely to kill me in the following moments. The monster was a tree, a small one, only slightly bigger than I was at the time. Even so, its body was thick and strong, but seemed agile enough to catch me quickly should I have tried to flee. The branches that it had for limbs seemed too skinny to be of any use. However, it stood on its legs quite easily, so I determined that they were stronger than they seemed. It had no discernible face, but in its voice, it held a smile at all times. I looked around once more for somewhere to run or hide, but there was nothing. I was completely at this thing's mercy. "What do you want me to do?" I asked it.
"Play with me,"
it said. It began to walk towards me slowly, its branches cracking with each step. Somehow, they didn't give way to the weight of the monster. By the time it reached me, I was screaming and crying and yelling for my brother and parents or anyone who could come and save me. But even at 8 years old, I knew that no savior would be coming. My fate was in the hands of this monster, who had been waiting for a little boy like myself to stumble into his domain for God knows how long. It reached a hand towards my face slowly, as if it were trying to comfort me. But when I flinched away, it stopped and said,
"It's okay,"
before running a branch across my cheek. In the wake of its touch was a long, deep cut that left the taste of blood in my mouth. I spit, and the creature made a forced laughing sound, as if it found no comedy, but that it felt the need to show some emotion.
"Ah, child, don't worry. You'll be going home soon enough,"
it said. "I can go back to my parents? And my brother?" I asked it. It attempted to laugh once more.
"No, child. You'll be coming home with me."
As soon as the words left its mouth, I began sprinting away, even as I knew I wouldn't make it very far. However, in the same moment that I began my escape, my brother burst in from the opposite direction and tried to tackle the monster. The creature wasn't having it, though. My brother did nothing but anger it. Nothing but drive it to murder. Without breaking my sprint, I turned and saw the beast whip around on my brother, who was already lying lifeless on the ground. Then it raised its sharpest branch up into the air and brought it down as hard as it could right on top of my brother's chest. He let out a muffled scream as blood spurted from his mouth and chest and hit the creature's body. I knew that he was dead, so I turned and kept on running. I heard the creature chasing after me, and I heard it calling my name. But somehow, I knew that its terror had to live on, and for that to happen, I had to survive the encounter with the image of it murdering my brother, trapped in my head for the rest of my existence. My brother's body was never recovered, and the creature was never seen again. Although I recounted my story several times to both my parents and the police, the official story is that my brother was mauled and then eaten by a bear. I no longer enter the woods, and I no longer write every spooky story off as fake. The truth is that the world holds creatures much more sinister than the average person could ever imagine. And my brother's death, along with my own memories, testify to that fact. I'm forever terrified because I know that of the thousands of urban legends, creepypastas, and scary stories floating around the internet, at least a few of them are true.